Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Marty.
Ooh, yay.
How
So
are
I
you?
heard that the guy that runs this thing was late.
Oh no.
Oh no.
And there's nothing like that that pisses me off so much.
Some
Is
people you just can't depend upon.
the guy that's going to run the thing shows up late. I had a late lunch. I loved it so much, and I was sitting there savoring it.
Mm.
It was a big prime rib steak thing, and I was going,
Oh.
oh, this is so good and everything. And then the phone rings, and Howard is, well, are we going to do it?
I was a little less emphatic. Car
Well,
54.
you could
where are
have
you?
been more emphatic, that's for sure.
Okay. Try to
Yeah,
be low key.
Just so you know, if I blip out, it's because we're having thunder, lightning, and heavy rain here.
Oh
Are
wow.
you? Okay.
We're having a 116-degree temperature here.
Hey, I'll share with you.
Yeah. Well, we're at 100 on our side, and
Oh, wow.
in Oregon, we're getting all kinds of smoke from California.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
We're not having wildfires here because the
Nothing to
federal
burn.
government said we need to be able to get back onto our land, onto the federal land, and do what the feds said when they originally had this land. They said it's for sustained timber, for sustained timber yield, and they haven't done that for 20, 30 years, which is why we were having all the fires. Last year, they said, no, you got to do it, and we have to do that. And so the forests are being thinned, and also there's guys out there working in the woods, which means when a lightning strike happens, there's somebody there to put it out. So we haven't had any fires up here.
Cool.
Good plan.
Great.
All right. Well, if it's all right with you, I think we can kind of get started.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Teresa, you're muted, just so you know. I think you tried to say something.
Teresa is,
Yeah, I figured it had something to do with the storm. All of a sudden I got all my power. I couldn't get it before. Right, so you can hear me now?
oh
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
All right. So let's go into a review of what is a republic.
What is it?
Yeah.
Someone speak up. Yes, Teresa, I saw you raise your hand.
Well, it's a constructed thing between a monarchy, an aristocracy, and democracy. And it has a written constitution, at least in our case. And it is so constructed to provide a balance of powers between those three natural forms of government that people will choose.
All right. Anyone want to add anything to that?
Yes, it's ruled by law. As Teresa said, its purpose is to balance power, so no one part of the government has total power over the other parts of the government and the whole citizenry. And it is from the Latin res publica, public things. And there was a Greek somebody or another who...
Polybius.
Polybius?
Polybius, right?
All right.
Polybius, yes.
I'll take your word for it. Poly something. Polly want a cracker? All right. Enough. Good. So how's that?
Yeah, Polybius was quite a guy. He was actually a Greek who was captured by the Romans and carried back. Well, actually, he was a hostage from that was taken by the Romans to help cement the peace. And when he got back to Rome, they said, "Hey, you're a pretty smart guy. You've read a lot of stuff. You should teach our young people about that." So he became a tutor to the finest young Roman gentlemen. and he looked quite a bit at their republic and so on.
Nice.
Hi, Robert.
How are you?
Good.
I'm having a little trouble here, but I'm with you.
Okay, good. Now we can see you, we can hear you.
Good.
And so that's what a republic is. The Constitution of the United States forms a republic, makes a republic. So would anyone like to tell us about that and how the Constitution makes a republic?
Well, it says that it's a republic for one.
Okay.
It declares that it is, and based on some of the things we just talked about, it's a republic. It's a created form of government as opposed to one of the three natural forms of government.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to actually, in the preamble, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union and all that, do establish and ordain this Constitution for the United States of America. The preamble declares that it's the people that are setting it up, which then it becomes the people's thing, which is what res publica more correctly is translated to as the people's thing. It's the thing that belongs to the people.
Good.
And then it sets out and says, here's Article 1. We're going to talk about one of the branches of government. It happens to be the one that is the piece that is the democratic form, which is the Congress. They make all the laws. It talks about the House of Representatives. It talks about the Senate. It talks about setting themselves up for business, that they have to that they have to keep a journal of what their activities are. It talks about what a quorum is. Then it goes into the procedure of of how they make a law. It has to go through one house, then it has to go through the other house, get signed by the president and all that. Then it goes into all of the powers. This is now Section 8, Article 1, Section 8. It goes into all of the powers that they are granting to this national government. Post offices and post roads, coining money, taking care of regulating the trade between the states and so on, and dealing with foreign governments, and being our voice, being the voice of each of the little 13 nations and now 50 nations, being the voice of all of them when dealing with other governments. And then it talks about the powers that are forbidden to Congress. That's Section 9. And then it talks about the powers that are forbidden to the states, because the United States as a corporate unit is going to take over certain powers. So we don't want to have the states mucking around with them. They can't go and make a separate peace with some foreign power. They have to be part of the United States. That sort of thing. Then we get into Article 2, which has to do with the executive, and this is the monarchy form of government. And the way that you can tell that is because it has one leader, one monarch that's over the top of it, and that's the President of the United States. A great deal of time was spent on how do we pick who the president is. So they go through quite lengthy description of that the states appoint electors, and the electors cannot be anybody that is part of the national government. And then those electors vote on who the president is going to be. And recently, I've written a couple of emails about what happens if they don't get the vote counted in time, because that's been a bit of a concern. Is if they don't get the vote counted in time, then does Nancy Pelosi become the next president, and so on. Very, very briefly, because I think that this this needs to be more broadly known, or more broadly, this is an idea that needs to be kind of brought to the fore, I think, is that if a state cannot get it together and figure out who their electors are going to be, then they just don't get to vote. Because, I mean, it's like Joel there, he goes down to the polling place and he votes. His neighbor doesn't. So does that mean that we have to hold off the election and not have an election and not have an election count and not have Joel's vote count because his neighbor was either too lazy or too stupid or too arrogant or too
Whatever.
Lazy?
you know, that other person didn't vote. So does that now cancel out Joel's vote? So, what this is my opinion. What should happen is that those electors that are appointed by the states, as they're supposed to be, get, oh, I'm sorry, we lost Teresa. That they meet at the appointed time and they cast their ballots, and those ballots then, as according to the Constitution, go to the President of the Senate in the seat of government, at the seat of government, which is Washington, D.C., and the President of the Senate opens them up in front of Congress, in front of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and counts them. And those guys that voted, their vote gets counted, and those guys that didn't vote, they don't get counted. And if you've got a state that their administration is too whatever to actually appoint electors, why do the rest of us have to suffer because they are too much that way? And the solution to it actually is, of course, the citizens of that state takes a look at who do we have as the governor. Who have we elected as our legislature? Let's throw the bums out and let's get somebody in here so that we can actually vote for president next time. So that's what I believe should happen. I may be in a minority, but we'll see what happens around December 14th, which is when the electors are supposed to meet.
They are bound by their own state laws to meet at that time, or they?
No, they're not. No, they're
Congress?
bound by federal law.
Federal law.
That the electors have to meet at that time,
Yeah.
which means the states have to have appointed them. Those
Article 2, Section 1, right?
I'm sorry.
Article 2, Section 1, right?
Correct.
All right, Marty.
Well, actually, it says they're going to meet, and then Congress has said, Congress
That's when it
has
will be.
decided the day that they're going to meet, and that's federal law, and that they all have to meet at the same time. So Congress had to decide what day are they going to meet. So that's what Congress did. And so in Tallahassee, you have a number of electors for Florida. In Salem, we have a number of electors from Oregon. In California, you have a number of electors for Sacramento. And we'll, any state that, well, and almost all of the state legislatures have decided that the electors get chosen by the party that gets the majority of the popular vote. So if they cannot decide who won the popular vote, they don't have any mechanism to appoint electors. So why should Joel's vote not be counted just because I was too slow to get to the polls myself?
Yes. One point is that by having local control of the elections, if there's going to be chicanery, it's only going to be in like one or two smaller districts or elements. So the overall whole will counterbalance it.
Exactly.
So even if with election fraud, it still rights itself. So now it's the Democratic states who are messing around, is it not, with this mass mailing of ballots to prospective
Anybody here?
voters?
Well, rather than getting into the politics of which party is doing what, it would behoove anyone to get your act together and appoint your electors. according
Sure.
to law, according to your own law. And if your own law says the party gets to appoints electors and it has to be on a popular vote, and you can't get your act together well enough to have a popular vote, then you don't have it. So you can bet that they are going to, if this idea that I have just put forward starts to gain momentum, and people start to understand it, they'll go, people in various states will just say, no, we want our vote to count. You guys, your administration, you governors and legislature here, you get your act together. We want electors appointed. So.
Yes, in the 2000 election, it was only one state that the whole thing hung on,
Right.
and that was decided ultimately.
That's right. That's right. And that's the problem. And that's one of the problems with the national popular vote is that then that one state, at that time it was Florida, then that one state, if they can't count theirs and they can't, then everybody is put on hold. Even Joel's vote doesn't count because we're all waiting for Florida to do its count and recount and recount and recount. So, so we
So
need.
why, question, so why then in that election, didn't they just say, sorry, Florida, you didn't get your vote to us in time, your vote doesn't count?
Well, we want to do everything we can to allow them to do that.
Yeah, but it went on for what, months?
No, actually, it didn't.
Seemed
Month and a
to.
half,
I'm sorry, Howard. What was that?
about a month and a half.
Yeah.
Was it a
And-
month and a half?
Yeah, I think it was
So
that
that
a
would
long
mean- so that would make it until the middle of December.
December. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just in
That's not
time
right
to
then.
appoint your electors, so that the electors could vote.
Oh,
So,
okay.
And they went back and forth to the to the Supreme Court and all that kind of thing. And of course, it
Didn't the Supreme Court?
finally hinged on they only wanted to recount some of the counties, but the Supreme Court said, "Excuse me, if you're going to recount, you got to recount the whole thing."
That's right.
And so, whatever, anyway, how that worked out. So I think they did do it in time to get the electors.
Oh, okay.
I think that the Supreme Court gave them a deadline. They had to do it by such and such a time, period.
And probably because they were looking at getting the electors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I don't think anybody talked about that elector issue at that time.
Right.
You know, that it being an elector issue.
Right, and it's real interesting. I think that we ought to, so everybody, you're all deputized. Go out and tell everybody about it.
Well, also, Marty, the reason it hung was because if Florida's voters, electoral voters, had gone to Gore, Gore would have been president,
Right.
and vice versa. It took those Florida electors to vote for Bush to George W.
So
To-
it was that
to-
close.
It
then,
was
Yeah, was
very close.
yes, it was that close. And so anyway, recounts and recounts and recounts.
Yeah.
And so what we do want to do is we do want to have it happen in time for electors to be chosen. And if they don't, I really just think that those states should say, we should say, sorry, you couldn't get your act together. I did. I want you. I want my vote to count. You are
Yep.
disenfranchising me, even though you say you're the one that's being disenfranchised.
That depends on who's leading.
I'm sorry.
That depends on who's leading at the time.
Yes, exactly right.
If your candidate's leading, you want your vote to count.
Right. Exactly. All right. I'm going to share my screen here, and we can move on if that's all right with everybody.
One other point, and that is if the states cannot get their act together, there is always the House of Representatives that will vote the president. It's
Well, no.
Plan
See,
B.
what happens is they can only do that. They only do that if the electors can't decide. Now, suppose just using an example here, just suppose that because you had mentioned Democrats before, but let's say that all of the Republican states are the ones that they get their act together and they send in their electoral votes to the president of the Senate and so on. And he opens up and he counts them. But we're missing New Jersey, we're missing New York, we're missing.
California.
Well, no, California will probably be there because there's very little question of
Yeah.
which way California is going.
Yeah.
And so they count up all the votes that they got. Three or four or six states didn't get it together. Instead of there being 538 electoral votes, there'll only be 500, let's say. So that would mean instead of having to get 270 votes to be a majority vote, you'd only need 251. So let us suppose in that case then that the Republican nominee gets the 251. He got the majority of the electoral votes.
That's right.
And if he
so all this foot dragging and confusion that seems to be being generated will just not matter at all if enough of the states keep their act together.
If this idea that I just gave you takes hold. Because right now, with the level of education and the level of understanding of the Constitution, there will be lawsuits and there will be this and there will be that and all kinds of things about, these guys didn't, these guys in wherever, North Carolina, they're still counting their votes. And so, we got to wait for them and all this kind of stuff. And there will be there'll be all kind of lawsuits and stuff going on. However, if somebody just takes a look at the constitutional issue of what do we have to do, I think that they would find what I found. And they'll do that, but we kind of have to, you and I are the ones that understand about this, and a few other people that are on my mailing list understand about this, but we're not, on this call, there's what, 6 of us?
Yeah.
Six or seven.
Yeah, 6 or 7, so there's not really a majority, so.
I might be able to pick up some extra money, going in and counting, verifying signatures on absentee ballots for the county of Los Angeles.
Wow, very cool.
I just thought of that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. See, when we first moved to Oregon, and Oregon has mail-in ballots, all ballots, all elections are mail-in. There is no going to the polls. There are no polls in Oregon. And they've been doing it for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, something like that. The first election that I was here, I got to sit in the county clerk's office and watch them going through and verifying the signatures and sending it over here and then having it get opened up and, all the rest of this stuff. There was even one point when I saw one of the ballot people over there doing something. I didn't understand what he was doing. I said, that doesn't look right to me. And so I called over the office manager, whatever, that was in charge of all of us who were observing. And I said, what are they doing with that ballot right there? I want to know what's going on with that ballot right there. And so she went over, she got the ballot, she brought it back to me. She said, she found out the explanation of what they were doing with it. She brought it over to me and she said, they're going over this because they're looking at blah, 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 blah. And that was, and that was fine. I said, okay, thank you very much. She took it back, the ballot got counted. They have a real, at least in our county, they have a real solid way of doing it. And I'm very, in our county, I believe the vote. I'm not so sure about Portland, but, well, no, and the reason for that is because Multnomah County, which is where Portland is, waits for all the other counties to report. And then they report what their total is.
That's fishy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
fishing.
think.
Exactly right, it's fishing. So, all right,
John,
well,
there you go.
enough of that. I've wasted your time with this.
You have not
Oh,
wasted
that's
our time.
fascinating.
All right, let us move on. We are, can you see my screen? Can you
Yes.
see
Yes.
presidential powers? Okay. So we're up to the point of looking at what the presidential powers are, what the president can do. So Marty, you're on the top of my list. So if you start reading section 2, I will somewhere along the line tell you to stop.
Okay, great. Section 2. The president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States.
Okay, good.
He may require,
Okay, that's fine. I got it. I'm sorry. Maybe I should just say stop. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. So the president is the commander in chief. He's not the commander in chief of everybody and everything, however. He's the commander in chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of those militia from the states which are called into actual service of the United States. So when they all talk, see, and that's when Lincoln used to sign that he was commander in chief of the Army and Navy of the United States. He didn't sign commander in chief, and that's something that has been forgotten. So people start to think that the president is the commander in chief of everything, and he's not. It's the Army and Navy of the United States.
is he now commander-in-chief of the Air Force?
And he would be, yes, because that's also a military branch as well. And the Space Force as well.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Any of the military branches and of the militia.
Was there, how did he get to be commander in chief of the Air Force and the Space Force? Was that an amendment or something?
I imagine that when they are created, because Congress has to create them by law. And I imagine that when they are created by law, they name the president as the commander in chief of them as well.
Okay.
I believe historically that up until 1947, the Air Force was called the Army Air Force.
It was.
The Army Air Corps.
Yeah, because there was
branch.
no Air Force. There was no
Right.
Air Force until after the Second World War. So during the
Yes.
during the Second World War, those guys that flew planes were the Army Air Corps, and then the Navy had their own Air Corps as well.
Yes.
Okay, Marty,
Yes.
continue on, and I will tell you to stop again at a point.
Okay. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments.
Okay, stop. So this is the basis for a cabinet. They say, people have asked me, well, where do we get the Department of the Interior, and where do we get the Department, where does it say in the Constitution you can have those things? Well, here it is right here. They're assuming that there will be executive departments. And so he is requiring in writing opinions from the Secretary of State, from the Secretary of the Treasury, from the Secretary of the Interior on various matters. Go ahead, continue this, and probably till the end of the sentence.
Okay. Upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment.
Good. So that was kind of tacked on there. The subject related to the respective department of their respective offices. So he'll ask the Secretary of the Treasury to write to him about money matters, and he'll ask for an opinion in writing from the Secretary of State for, what do you think we should do about Iran or whatever, So, and then we also have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. I think that we talked about this before, but why do you think that they did that?
It's a check and balance against the judicial.
Good. Good. Anybody have
Also,
any other ideas about that?
Also, historically, in England, the king could grant pardons to people.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Yes. Okay. That's right. That's right. Okay. And why do they have this thing here about except in cases of impeachment?
Is that in case the president's being impeached? Because in that case, he wouldn't have the power.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Is that saying that in case the president's being impeached?
well, there are, you know, federal officers, any kind of federal officers can be impeached. Judges
Okay.
can be impeached. So if Congress impeaches a sitting judge, and the president likes what the sitting judge is doing, if that weren't here, except in cases of impeachment, quote unquote, if that weren't here, then the president could pardon him from that and keep him on the bench because he likes the decisions he's making or something.
Well, it also says if he could, if that weren't in there, the president could not be impeached because he could just pardon himself too, right?
True enough. True enough.
Maybe.
Yeah, it would take a Nixon to think of something like that. Exactly.
Just a minute, I'm sorry.
Yes. All right. Now those are the things. What's in that first paragraph that we just did? These are the things that he has the power to do, fully and completely. He does not. It's just he doesn't have to ask anybody. He's the commander in chief. He can ask for opinions in writing. He doesn't have to ask anybody about should I do this or not.
Now, this doesn't say anything about needing congressional approval for any of his department people, but don't they do that these days?
Well, no. Well, the executive departments have to be created by Congress.
But he has the principal officers in each of the executive departments. He creates them,
No.
but he doesn't.
No. The only thing he can do here is require the opinion in writing.
Oh, that's right, the opinion in writing. Okay, good. Thank you.
Sorry. I don't mean to say no, but
That's fine.
okay.
Another point is that the Congress, the House and the Senate are the branches of the government that impeach. So if the president could pardon somebody under impeachment or indictment, then he would have usurped the powers of that other branch of government, and we want the powers balanced.
Yeah, this is part of the balance of powers. That's exactly right. This is part of the balance of powers, so that he can't override what Congress is doing there. Now, the next point is we get into he shall have the power, but with the advice and consent of the Senate. So there's certain things that he can do now, but he has to get the advice and consent of the Senate. So, Bob, you're up on this one, and I'll ask you to read for a while, but then I'll tell you to stop somewhere in the middle.
Okay. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur.
Okay, good. That's all right. So he makes treaties. Because particularly that's the job that we want to do. We want to have somebody negotiate the treaties. We want to have somebody speaking with one voice for us and so on. So he makes the treaties, but then 2/3 of the senators who are present in the chamber at the time that this treaty comes up have to concur with it. So it's with the advice and consent of the Senate that he does this, that he has to have 2/3. Now, of course, a quorum is only 1/2 of all the senators, or more than half, so that's 51 senators, and 2/3 of that is only 33 or 34. So if they can pull up a treaty in the middle of the night when they got 51 senators there, and they can get 34 of them to say yay, then it will pass in the middle of the night. So you have to watch a little bit for that. And go ahead. Any comment on that? Thought?
Oh, that's good. Okay. And he shall nominate and by and with the advice of and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and counsels, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for.
Okay, good. So this, Marty, I think goes to your question about the principal officers of the executive departments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He wants to have Steve Mnuchin be the Secretary of the Treasury, but Steve Mnuchin has to go in front of the Senate and get
Vetted.
get advice and consent.
Of the Senate.
What do you call it?
Well, the advice and consent. So, but the Senate can give their advice and consent. Does he have to follow that advice and consent?
Well, the thing is that he can't appoint someone. I mean, he can appoint someone to something, but if the Senate says no and rejects it, then that person is not that position.
Okay.
I mean, that was why when we had, when they have nominations for the Supreme Court and the president nominates so-and-so, wants to have that person be on the Supreme Court, then they have to go to hearings in the Senate. And the Senate then, the Senate has to agree with that, has to consent to that.
Yeah, that's what it says there. He shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint, da, 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 da.
Yes, there you go. That's good. Good. Thank you. That's exactly right. And those are ambassadors, public ministers and counsels, judges of the Supreme Court, and any other officers whose appointments are not otherwise provided for. Because there are some offices that are going to be in this that are provided for, like, for instance, vice president. That one is provided for. There's a constitutional way to get a vice president. There is a constitutional way to get various other officers, and they don't.
I don't think we should do the constitutional way to get the vice president, because we haven't been doing that since FDR.
How do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, the vice president is supposed to be elected on a separate ballot.
Yeah, he is. Well, yes, he is.
No, he's not. He's selected as a running mate instead of being on a separate ballot.
Yes, but when your electors elect, they cast two ballots, one for the president and one for the vice president.
So they still do that, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay. I thought they picked by party.
Well, they do pick by party because almost all the states select or appoint their electors based on who wins which party wins the popular vote. So you're going to have just only party loyalists become electors. And I remember a story that when the Massachusetts electors were voting in 1960 for president, of course that was Kennedy, and they received their ballots from the party, and it had gold engraved, I vote for John Kennedy. And then whoever the running mate was also, I vote for this person for vice president. So they still do that. They still do that. I think, Robert, you want to continue with this, but I think it's,
And for which shall be.
it's at this point right there.
No, and
Yeah,
which shall
yeah.
be.
Yeah, but the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments.
Okay. So you see that the Congress can then say, well, we have you have to get our advice and consent. The Senate can say, you have to get our advice and consent for, the ambassador to Great Britain or something. But, the second in command for his chief of staff in England, we don't have to give advice and consent for that. It can be kind of anybody that he wants. So then that would mean that they have then vested the appointment of an inferior officer to the president alone, or the courts, or the heads of departments. So they could vest that to the head of the department. They could say, all right, we have to give our advice and our consent for the Secretary of State, but we're going to let the Secretary of State choose his own chief of staff, and that would be the head of the department doing it. Does that make sense?
How about the in the courts of law? That means that the Congress can give the president the right to appoint federal judges?
Yes, they could. However,
and he's done that. I mean, Trump has done what, 300, he says?
Yes, and what I've heard is that many of them have to go through the Senate, and it may be that the Senate has to appoint all judges.
They have to confirm.
Why do they have to do that?
Federal judges.
I'm sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
Well, does he or does he not have the option of appointing then judges? Did the Congress give him that right?
I don't know.
The Constitution gives him that right.
Well,
no, it says right here, but the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone in the courts of law, which
Right.
means to me judges.
Yes, no, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So the
Congress
Congress
has to give him the
confirms.
right. The Constitution doesn't give him
Confirms.
that right.
Confirms.
No, Howard, just hang on a second.
All right.
Because Robert is exactly right. And I do not know what Congress has passed as a law. I do not, and it is up to Congress. So I don't know the current state of that.
Well, my guess would be that if there's a Democratic Congress and a Republican president, that they would vote to not give him that option. But it seems as though Trump has, I have not heard of any hearings being heard on any district judges, and he says he's appointed 300 of them. So,
Well, but they also, when I've heard that story, I've also heard about how Mitch McConnell managed to get them all through the Senate.
oh, okay.
So, but they could also say, see, what they could do, and I think back in the in the early 1800s, what they may have done, I'm not sure for sure, but I know that when they first set up the Supreme Court, they had each justice on the Supreme Court also rode a circuit around his area of the United States. So it would have the circuit court, the circuit judge who was riding the circuit in New England, and then another one in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, who knows, and another one in the southern states and so on. And then they would get together and be the Supreme Court also. It could be that they don't do that anymore. We have district judges, and then appellate courts, and we now have 9 districts. The 9 what are called circuits still, but I don't think there's any Supreme Court justice that actually goes out to California and sits there with the Ninth Circuit Court I don't think they do that.
I don't think so either.
But my understanding is that they used to back in the early 1800s. They could have at that time said allowed the courts to appoint judges as they needed underneath them in their circuits. And so then there would have been a law that said we'll have lower courts of law, and the Supreme Court shall appoint them or something. I mean, they could do that. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But does this make sense? It's in the hands of Congress who gets to appoint what. But they have the ultimate power, if they wanted to say nobody gets to appoint nothing unless it goes through the Senate. Okay, we're good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Howard, I think you're up to do this one here.
Okay. The president shall have power to fill up vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session.
Yes. So if the Senate is in recess and a Supreme Court justice dies, or the Secretary of the Treasury gets hit by a truck or whatever, then he has the power to fill that vacancy because the Senate is in recess. But the Senate when the Senate comes back from their recess, they can either consent to it or they can deny it. And that recess, that appointment will expire at the end of their next term, at the end of their next sessions. Each Congress has basically 2 sessions, and each year a Congress is a 2-year period, because you have all of the House of Representatives gets reelected, and 1/3 of the senators. So in that 2-year period, though, they break it down into 2 sessions, one for each year. So basically, his commission is up in a year. So I think what this means, and we can discuss this if it doesn't make sense or if somebody has a different idea, is that if the president has granted a commission, it is only good until the end of the year, and then he has to, and then if they haven't voted on it, then it has expired, and he has to make a new proposal, and then with the advice and consent of the Senate, have that person appointed.
Are you saying that,
That's the way I read it.
are you saying that the end of the year and the end of their next session are the same?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. So the session, when do these sessions end?
Well, I was just thinking about that.
They just had one, didn't they? They just had a recess.
They had a recess, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had a recess, but let me ask this.
A recess is not the same as the end of a session, I guess, right?
No.
Yeah. I'm going to ask my
Ask
old friend
Jeeves.
Bing. When does session of Congress
Congress.
end?
And it should be the Senate. Maybe the Senate ends differently than the House, because this is the Senate
No,
Yeah.
usually they go into,
They
together.
could. They could adjourn at different times,
Yeah.
the House and the Senate.
well, it's saying here I asked him about session, and it gives me, here's a session that's 2020, and there's another session that was 2019. So it looks like it's a calendar year.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it looks like.
Okay, sounds reasonable.
So I think so, yeah.
Especially since they're elected in November, you know, that their session ends in December and the new session guys come in January.
Yes, and they're re-inaugurated.
There you go.
They're, you know, they're sworn in and all that
Uh-huh,
in
yeah.
January. And so that now becomes I think we're up to the 116th Congress is where
Yes, that's correct.
and each Congress has 2 sessions.
Now, you could also have a lame duck session where the old Congress after the November election can be called back to get some work done before the new Congress comes in the early part of January.
And they do that all the time.
All the
Yeah.
time.
Yes, indeed. All right, let me get back where we're at.
But see, that would be after their end of their next session. So if they came in for lame duck, that doesn't work with this end of their next session. So they have to do it before their session ends, whether they do a lame duck or not. Correct?
Lame
Yes.
duck doesn't, the only meaning of lame duck is that you're going to have people in there who know their job is over.
Over.
And they will either then say, okay, I don't have to do anything now
Yeah.
that I think is wrong. I'm going to just use what my conscience tells me I don't have a job anyway. Or they're going to say, well, I'm going to do everything I can to feather my own nest. So
Stack the court.
it can go either way.
Yeah.
All right, section 3. So, okay, let's do section 3. And I think that we're going to be able to, Howard, no, you just read, didn't you, Howard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kevin?
Marty, you want to do
No,
section?
how about Kevin?
And I think we're going to be able to go through the entire thing.
Good. So how about Kevin or Joel? They haven't read.
I'm sorry?
Kevin and Joel have not read.
I don't- sorry. Sorry, guys.
It's all right.
Um,
Section 3.
Section 3.
all right. Oh, my goodness. I thought I only had 4 people left. Okay.
I got
All right. Kevin, how would you like to do section 3? And I think you're going to make it all the way through, or maybe I'll stop you in the middle. I'm not sure.
Okay. Section 3, he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measure as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may on extraordinary occasions convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them, with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States.
Good. So I have on the
it has never happened.
it's never happened where he's had to
Adjourn them.
convene the houses or in case of disagreement have them adjourn.
But you said he has convened both houses in like times of war, like right after Pearl Harbor. Didn't he convene both houses of Congress?
Oh yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
But not to adjourn them. He's never convened them to adjourn them.
Well, he's never.
Uh,
Well, he may convene
Time of-
or either, and in case of disagreement between them. I think it has never happened that there was a case of disagreement with respect to when they were going to adjourn. He
Yeah.
adjourns them. I think that's never happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I don't know of any circumstance of that.
All right. Any thoughts on that one?
no, over the side, you say only a president can recognize a new nation. I'm not sure where that comes in.
That's where he receives ambassadors and other public ministers.
Oh, I didn't realize was to recognize a new nation, but okay.
So if he doesn't, well, if he doesn't recognize the
The ambassador of that nation, the new nation. I
right,
see.
and if he doesn't recognize what's in Venezuela, there was contested
Oh yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
who won. So he can receive the ambassador from one of them, but not the other one.
Right.
Basically recognize that that's the rightful ruler of that country.
Regarding Tsarist Russia, the Bolsheviks were not recognized as the valid government of Russia until FDR's, I believe, first term.
Yes, and that's an interesting story. I wrote an email about it. Maybe I'll send that one out again about exactly why FDR decided to do that. It's rather well, you can look at it as possibly nefarious.
Was FDR a secret communist?
Oh, I don't know. That's up to you.
All right. Okay.
John, who are the officers of the United States?
Yeah, officers of the United States. So
Who are they?
that's generals. He's the one that like if you're in the Army, you get a commission.
Talking about military officers then. That
Yeah,
refers to military officers.
That's
Okay.
military officers. Also, if you have even if you have customs inspectors, they are commissioned. Those officers are commissioned by the president.
Okay.
Whether some of them may need the consent of the Congress, but the president is the one that commissions them. They basically work for the president because
Okay.
he is the monarch of the executive branch. All right, and I think Joel gets to wrap us up.
All right, Section 4. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Exactly right. So, of course, on the sidebar there, I say, who impeaches? Who impeaches?
House,
Good. Who convicts?
Senate.
All right, good. So that's for treason, bribery, and all other high crimes and misdemeanors. And high crimes and misdemeanors is interesting. I've mentioned to you before, Professor Nadelson, who looks at the original meaning of the Constitution and the original terms of art from British law of the time and that sort of thing. And high crimes and misdemeanors was a term of art, had a very special meaning. It didn't mean just any kind of misdemeanor. It was a high misdemeanor. It was had to be a pretty bad thing. Good.
Well, a misdemeanor is like, say, a speeding ticket, isn't it? And
A
misdemeanor is a heavier crime.
Well, a misdemeanor is, well, you know what a demeanor is? It's how you look.
Yeah.
So a misdemeanor is, hey, he looked at me cross-eyed. I didn't like the way he looked at me. That's a misdemeanor.
Well, it's a little stronger than that, because after that it's felony, and you go away for a long time for a felony. But misdemeanors, not so much. You might get a fine and 30 days in jail, maybe.
Well, it depends upon whether you are one of the favored elites or not. But let's not go there.
Well, yes, there's much truth to what you say there.
All right, but let's not go there. I think next time,
It's elite privilege, not white privilege.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to okay. Well, here in the book, you can read all of this in the book about what happened.
We're going to oligarchy next time, right?
Executive Department. Yes, we are.
Ooh, Article 3. I can't wait. Woof.
Yep, next time we're gonna do Article
Excited.
3. Here we are.
Woo!
Okay, guys.
Is that's it? That's all it is? Oh my God.
No, we finished Article 2 in like 2 sessions, Marty. We're
I
moving
know.
along now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it took us about 8 to do Article 1.
That's right.
Yes, sure.
Right, so they're getting shorter
Okay.
and shorter. We may
Yep.
we may get through Article 3 next time.
Cool.
All right. Any questions, thoughts, anything to say before I end this?
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
have
very
a
much.
question for you, John.
What's that?
I have a question for you. The latest brouhaha is that the Democrats are afraid that if Trump loses the election, he won't leave the White House. And they're now trying to come up with plans as to what they can do to
Right.
get him out of there.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you why I don't take much stock in that, because the first time I heard that, it was that Clinton wasn't going to leave the White House,
That's right.
and then it was
Bush.
that Bush wasn't going to leave the White House.
Then Obama wasn't either.
And then it was Obama's not going to leave the White House, and every one of them did.
Well, they're saying that if all the votes aren't counted, if he wins on election night, and there are a lot of votes that are not counted yet, blah, 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 he's not going to leave if he loses. And they're trying to, I know what you say is true, but they're trying to make a big deal out of this and make it a big, another thing about Trump said he's not going to leave. So
of course,
they can't do anything much about it anyway, I don't think.
well, there isn't, but it depends. It depends on whether or not they actually hold the electoral vote, and they need to hold the electoral vote, even if some states don't
Participate.
get their electors put in time.
Yeah, well, Biden says that he'll get the military to escort him out of the White House. And he says there's a lot of military people that don't like him. Well, since
Well, there's a lot of military people who do.
yes,
So,
there's more that do than don't, that's for sure.
We're looking for, Biden is apparently there looking for a civil war, apparently. I don't
Yep.
know. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Woo!
It's been great.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Bravo.
Happy Labor Day.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Indeed, happy Labor Day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well,
Bye-bye, guys.